Before we get started, I do want to discuss how this attraction in particular has played a major role in popular culture and our nation's culture as a whole. I do recognize its importance and I appreciate its significance, but does that significance protect this attraction from any sort of criticism regarding the ride experience? No. So today we're going to talk about Tiana's Bayou Adventure as a complete package, from entering the queue to exiting the attraction. So this video is going to focus on the ride itself, not necessarily the role that this attraction is playing in pop culture and in popular discourse. Because I'm not the type of person who really wants to contribute to that. I love theme parks. This is a theme park attraction. We're going to talk about the new log flume at Disney World. Now that that's out of the way, if you could take a moment and please like, comment, and subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. I'm a pretty small theme park channel, so I appreciate every single ounce of support. Thank you so much. Before we dig into this ride experience, I just want to talk about how Disney handled the announcement process of this ride. So 2020 was obviously a very significant year for everyone in the world. That's when Tiana's Bayou Adventure was announced. And I really don't appreciate how Disney handled this because they announced that Splash Mountain would be turning into Tiana's Bayou Adventure exactly 1 month after the death of George Floyd, which was totally not an accident at all. That was totally planned out and purposeful. And it kind of made it feel like Disney was like, this is about us now. You know, it's like that. You probably know someone in your life who will take anything and make it about them. And it kind of feels like that's what Disney did about the political situation at the time, you know? So the fact that they had the gall to do that kind of throws me off a little bit. At that point in time, the Disney parks were closed, so it's not like you could go say goodbye to Splash Mountain at that time. And they were very, very loose with the details because I have a pretty strong theory that they had no idea what they were doing when they made that announcement. So they couldn't provide any details because they didn't know what their plan was, which is just absolutely ridiculous. Like, why did you make this announcement? And if you need any proof of that, just take a look at the original concept art for the ride and then compare it to the actual ride. Like, they used to have like a massive tree on top of the structure with a boat, kind of like Typhoon Lagoon, and that looks nothing like the final product. So they didn't know what they were doing in 2020. And the fact that it took 4 years to re-theme an attraction also proves that. Because rethemes don't take nearly as much time as a brand new from the ground attraction. So in my opinion, it's ridiculous how long it took Tiana's Bayou Adventure to open at Magic Kingdom. And at the time of this recording, it's still not open at Disneyland in Anaheim. It is what it is, but I feel like they botched the announcement process for this ride. Because a lot of people, they were focusing on what they were losing, and at that time, they didn't know when they were losing it. I feel like that really stamped out any sort of excitement for this attraction, because like when California Screaming closed, when Tower of Terror closed, they knew how long they had left with the attraction. And for Splash Mountain, we had no idea when we were going to lose it. And it ended up being years, but that just creates frustration from other people because like the people who are looking forward to Tiana's Bayou Adventure, they didn't know how long they would have to wait. So just overall, the whole announcement process for this attraction was incredibly frustrating. Like, no matter how you feel about Splash Mountain closing, you were probably upset with how it was handled. And I feel like that Disney should be facing a lot more criticism for how they did this. It felt very reactionary at the time. I'm pretty sure Splash Mountain stayed open for so long because they were still planning how they were going to change the attraction, which we're going to dig into later with the ride experience. Like, I feel like some of this is reflected in the actual ride itself, which is not great at all. It feels like they did not have a story plan, so they had to throw it together while Splash Mountain was still operating as the parks reopened following the pandemic shutdown. Plus, if you've watched my Disney names video, Tiana's Bayou Adventure is a very vague name. It's terrible in my opinion, and I discussed that in that video if you want to check that out. And in my opinion, they chose this name because they didn't know what the ride experience was going to be when they made the announcement, which is just absolutely ridiculous. So I feel like Tiana's Bayou Adventure deserves a better name. In the comment section for that video that I just mentioned, a lot of people brought up the name Tiana's Bayou Bash. Now that I've been on the attraction, I feel like that's a perfect name. One of the criteria I had for a good name in that video was alliteration, and Bayou Bash, that's perfect alliteration, is way better than Tiana's Bayou Adventure. And the whole ride is about preparing for a party. So that perfectly describes the ride experience. It just doesn't make any sense why they settled on a very poor name. Tiana's Bayou Bash would have been much better, in my opinion. And I feel like a majority of people feel the same way. But now that we got that out of the way, let's move on to the exterior and the presentation of this attraction. So this video is going to be very Magic Kingdom focused because that's the iteration of the attraction that opened first, and as I mentioned, it's the only one that's opened as of now. But I'm a local to Disneyland and I walk by Tiana's Bayou Adventure all the time in that park, so seeing the construction is very exciting. So it's been interesting to see it shift from the orange. I feel like orange was the dominant color in the Splash Mountain facade, and now it's very green, and I feel like that works pretty well. When I visited Disney World in 2023, I saw their Tiana's Bayou Adventure under construction. Seeing the greenery was actually pretty exciting. I think it looks really good. Like, I'm the type of person who really loves Pandora, the World of Avatar at Animal Kingdom, and I feel like the greenery on the mountain kind of reflects the greenery of that land, which might be, it's personally my favorite land of all time. I love Pandora. So I love the colors in Tiana's Bayou Adventure. That being said though, I think it's gonna look better on the Disneyland version than it does at Disney World. The existing Splash Mountain in Florida is very wide. It was very wide. So the same structure is now Tiana's Bayou Adventure, and it is also very wide. It's pretty fat, so it doesn't look as tall as the iteration in California. I feel like the one in California is more narrow, so it looks a little more imposing and a little more tall, at least when it was Splash Mountain. Now that it's Tiana's Bayou Adventure, or now that it's taking shape at least, I feel like the green just pops a little more because it looks more like tree shaped, if that makes any sense. Because Tiana's in Florida looks a lot like a bunch of clustered bushes together because it's so wide. It takes up so much space. And if you're in the queue for the attraction, there's actually the show building is like pure orange. Like, they didn't theme that at all. I don't know why. The rest of the attraction is all green, but the wall back there is just orange. It looks like the same Splash Mountain rock work. I don't remember if that was like that when it was Splash Mountain, so if someone with a better memory than I can let me know down below, I would greatly appreciate that. That one wall is kind of weird, but that's a total nitpick. I'm kind of getting off track here. But like, I remember one day walking into Disneyland and seeing some of the scaffolding down on our version of the mountain, and the greenery was actually, it looked so good. It got me really excited for the attraction, and I feel like it just works better at Disneyland. Plus, you gotta keep in mind that Splash Mountain in Disneyland is in Critter Country, right along the rivers of America, and there's a bunch of tall trees like right next to it, so I feel like it blends in a lot better with the surrounding area. In Magic Kingdom, it's in Frontierland, and when they had Splash Mountain in Frontierland as well, obviously, which does not make any sense because a southern bayou right next to the Old West just doesn't make any sense at all. I would make the argument that Splash Mountain fit in better aesthetically because, as I've said earlier, orange was the primary color on that mountain. Of course, orange is the primary color of Big Thunder Mountain. So if you don't think about it at all and you just look at the two attractions, I feel like from an aesthetic point of view, they fit right next to each other very, very well. But now that Tiana's is all green, it really doesn't make any sense because it really leaned into the Southern Bayou aspect, and the greenery right next to a mountain that's supposed to be in the Old West makes no sense. Like, it never made sense from a logical standpoint, and now it doesn't make any sense from an aesthetic point of view. So it seems like Disney's gonna try to change that going forward, but as of now, it doesn't fit in great. Just because I think that it fits into Disneyland better doesn't mean that I don't think that it's pretty in Florida. I heard a couple people complain that it looks a little Rainforest Cafe-esque, and I can kind of see that. I would make the argument that that applies more to the Florida version than California. Part of that might be my California bias, but who's to say? I still think it looks really good. Unfortunately, I didn't get the opportunity to see the attraction at night, so I'm very excited to see it at night. I'm sure it'll look great. Another big thing is the Splash Mountain sign used to be above the entrance for the indoor queue, and they moved their big attraction sign right in front of the attraction, which I actually really like. I think the Tiana's Bayou Adventure sign looks pretty good. So that's really nice. The queue itself, the outdoor queue, is very similar to the old outdoor queue for Splash Mountain. I feel like it's a lot more colorful though. The music is really cool. They had like a New Orleans jazz station playing, which is super fun. It's very exciting. But the indoor queue might have been the biggest improvement that this attraction made on the existing Splash Mountain. The indoor queue is very, very well done. It's supposed to be Tiana's business, so you walk in and there's like a front desk, and then you keep going throughout the queue. There's like a kitchen, there's a bunch of walls with a whole bunch of photos, so that's really cool. And the story is that Tiana's employee-owned business purchased this salt mine, which is pretty cool. There's this effect when you're walking through the queue where it's like shiny in the walls and on the floor, and that really caught me off guard. I thought that was really cool. And like, those are the little details that I expect from Disney, and usually they kind of skip out on those now. So to see something like that was really cool. I thought that was amazing, and it made me really happy because I feel like those are the type of details that Disney just glosses over now, but that's what makes Disney magic, you know, when they pay attention to all those little details. That being said though, the fact that they have the audacity to like push this thing as an employee-owned venture, it really irks me because Disney is anything but employee-owned. Like, they literally have the gall to theme their attraction to an employee-owned business, like a family-owned business, while at the same time they blocked out their own cast members from attending Magic Kingdom to experience this exact attraction, which is, the hypocrisy is just off the charts. Yeah, it infuriates me. So nothing Disney is employee owned. So the fact that they even tried to theme it to an employee owned business, it really gets under my skin. I really, really don't like it. You are not employee owned. Don't even try, you know? Like, that's ridiculous. What are you doing? You are a gigantic corporation. You don't get to do these types of things, you know? And then you exit the gift shop and they have like Tiana's Bayou General, which is employee owned, but all of this money is going to Disney and its shareholders, which, oh my, that's absolutely insane. And I feel like it's kind of ridiculous that more people aren't talking about this. That's borderline offensive in my opinion. Like, it really bothers me. This huge corporation is not allowed to cosplay as a family-owned business, an employee-owned business. I don't care what your story is, don't do it. That's not what you are. Now that that's out of the way, I thought the station was really well done. They actually kept the last chance to exit sign, which is pretty cool. I feel like that was a nice nod to Splash Mountain. But Splash Mountain really played up the fear of that drop, like the anticipation. And I feel like this ride doesn't do it as much, so I just thought that it was interesting that they kept that element of the anticipation. And of course, in the queue, they have all those signs where it's like 50-foot drop ahead, which in the grand scheme of things, 50 feet is not that tall, so it's kind of funny how much they play it up. But I know for a lot of tourists, that's a gigantic drop, you know. But I wonder if that is more of a warning sign instead of like a piece of theming, or like I don't know. I'm not sure what the purpose of the sign is, but the fact that they didn't really change it makes me think that it's more of a necessity rather than a courtesy, you know? So now the moment that we've all been waiting for, we're gonna dig into this ride experience. You roll out of the station into a right-hand turn, and then you go up the first lift hill. Going up that first lift hill has a really cool view of the water tower, which I didn't expect. So that was a really cool angle that I totally didn't think about. I like how much the water tower adds to the aesthetic of the ride. That's just something I wasn't anticipating. That's a pretty cool view. Just like the original Splash Mountain, you turn in front of the big drop. You pass a couple frogs on the left-hand side, and they are static figures. And if you watch my Pixar Pier video, you know that I like absolutely railed Disney for using static figures on an e-ticket attraction, but the good thing about these is that they have an effect that's like tangible and interesting, you know? So if you look at their eyes, they actually follow you, and that's for every single frog. There's a couple like armadillos throughout the attraction, and their effect is a lot more noticeable because their eyes are so much bigger, so that's really cool. I really appreciate it. It makes these static figures infinitely better than the static figures on Incredicoaster. So I very much appreciate it. Like, it's not just a frog, a plastic frog. I would have been furious if they didn't do anything except that. But thank God. these frogs are interesting. So that's really cool. And those frogs are actually going to be really important for a story element later in the attraction. So just take a note of the size of them. You also pass in front of the drop. There's a couple trees in the bayou, and overall, it's just so much more green. As I mentioned earlier, I think it's nice. You reach the second lift hill, and this is where you encounter your first animatronic. So this was one of my major nitpicks on my ride on this attraction, which, by the way, I only got to do it once. I'm the type of person who likes to get multiple laps on attractions because, like, I don't know, I'm just that type of person. But I didn't realize that the fast passes for this attraction were gonna go as fast as the boarding groups did, so I booked my boarding group, and then I didn't prioritize getting a lightning lane for the attraction, so I missed out on a second lap on this ride. But it is what it is. I would have preferred to make this video having been on it multiple times, but we're just going off of one ride for today. But once it opens at Disneyland, I promise I'm gonna ride that like 30 times, and then I'm gonna make a video about that one, so you got nothing to worry about. Okay, anyway, the second lift hill has your first animatronic, and overall, the animatronics on this attraction are absolutely astonishing. They're absolutely wonderful. They're beautiful. They're amazing. They're fluid, except for two of them. This is one of the two. So every other animatronic on the ride seems to behave a lot like the Haunted Mansion ghosts or the Pirates of the Caribbean animatronics, where it's just constantly moving because it knows someone is watching. And for whatever reason, the first Tiana animatronic has like a really weird idle. The way that the Splash Mountain / Tiana's Bayou Adventure ride system works is that it stacks boats at the base of the lift hill before it sends them up. And the Tiana's animatronic doesn't wake up until you're like at the very base of the lift hill, even though you can see it for like 30 seconds beforehand. So I really don't like that. That reminds me of the final animatronics on Runaway Railway at Disneyland. In Florida, you move all the way out of the way so you can't see them anymore. But in California, sometimes they just idle in position, and it looks really awkward because they don't move, and it's just like, what is happening, you know? They're not doing anything and you're just staring at them, and it's kind of eerie. And this animatronic does the same thing where it thinks that no one is looking at it, so it just kind of stops moving, and then when you get to a certain point, it'll start doing its motion. And in my opinion, it's kind of unsettling. I really don't like that. This animatronic should be acting like it's always in view of someone, because it is always in view of someone. I don't like that it idles. That's really weird. And another animatronic has the same issue. We're gonna talk about that one later though. But aside from that, it's a very well done animatronic, and I do appreciate that it's like a full scale animatronic, because at this point in the original Splash Mountain, we didn't really have anything. There was an animatronic owl, but that's like nothing compared to this one, so big improvement. And then we reached the backside of the mountain. This is really cute. Throughout the entire ride, with one exception, I think that the music is very well done. That's one of the biggest things that I was afraid about when this announcement was made. I love the Splash Mountain music. I feel like it's iconic because it is iconic. Zippity Doo-Dah was literally used as the opening music at Disneyland Park for a very long time.
Thank you, and may you enjoy your day in this magical place called Disneyland.
So like the Splash Mountain music means a lot to a lot of people. I was reminded like Princess and the Frog has great music too. So the music in this attraction, I was worried it was going to be a downgrade. I don't think that's the case, which is amazing. I'm very grateful for that. The backside of the mountain is pretty cute. There is a static figure of Lewis, but he's like bent over and he's behind crops. So I feel like once again, they got away with it because they did it very well. They hid Lewis and they added the moving crops. So at least there's something interesting happening. I appreciate that. It's not like you can put like a full scale animatronic out there because it would get absolutely soaked in the rain in Florida. So I think it's pretty cool. And it's just a vibe up there. Like that's one of my favorite parts about Splash Mountain too. Just vibing to the music going around the backside of the mountain up there. So it's so much fun. And then you pass Mama Odie's like hut thing, which used to belong to Brer Bear. So that's pretty cool. She says something, and then you reach the first drop, which is fun. It used to be Slip and Falls. I can't remember if they gave it a new name now, but it's cute, it's fun, It's a good introduction to drops. And then we're going to enter the main dark ride sequence. So as I discussed, the whole story for this attraction is that you're going into the Bayou to look for musicians to attend Tiana's big party at the end of the attraction. So overall, I feel like the Bayou scenes are pretty well done. Like, as I mentioned, the animatronics in here are always moving because they're always in view, and I wish that the original Tiana animatronic would act the same way, but we already talked about that. So moving on. They also themed the ceilings, so I think that's really cool. It feels like a full 360 degree like themed experience, so that's amazing. I really appreciate that. In terms of the original Splash Mountain, I always preferred the indoor sequence of the Disneyland version because it felt like you were actually going into a mountain. The Splash Mountain in Florida, a lot of the walls kind of just looked like classroom walls, and I was just like, what is this? You know, it kind of had like a weird lighting that was really bright for no reason. So I feel like they fixed the lighting in the Florida mountain, so I really appreciate it. It's a lot darker, which makes more sense in the context of a mountain, even though this ride isn't a mountain anymore technically, but it's still a mountainous structure. Something else that I noticed is that Tiana and Louis have different dialogue loops for each log that passes in front of them. They'll say one thing to one log, and then when another log passes, they'll say another thing, which I greatly appreciate because they know that even though you're not the log being spoken to, you're still within earshot, so you can still hear them. So it kind of ruins the immersion if you just hear an animatronic tell you the same thing over and over again. Like, it's a small world. So I appreciate the variety there. They didn't have to do that, but they took the time to do it, so greatly appreciate it. That being said, though, there are a couple sections in here where it does feel kind of bare. Throughout the entire indoor section, they have like fireflies dancing on the back walls. I assume that's just projection, but sometimes that's all it is. Like, you just have fireflies and then there's nothing else. Like, cool, but like, I feel like you could have done more here. But that being said, though, I feel like the main reason why they did that is because there aren't that many characters in this attraction. You have Tiana, you have Louis, you have Mama Odie, which we haven't gotten to yet, and then that's pretty much it, because everyone else is just there to support their story. So you have 3 characters. And obviously, the original Splash Mountain had 3 main characters. But the thing about this version is that Tiana and Louis are looking for other critters. They're looking for those characters. So it makes sense to have them together. So you can't have 2 Tianas right next to each other, because obviously that wouldn't make any sense. That breaks the immersion. Tiana's supposed to be a person who's like keeping up in front of you. So if you could see 2 of them, that would not be great. So you have to have enough room so that you can't see the previous scene. Tiana and Louis are working together, but in the original Splash Mountain, you had Brer Rabbit running away from Brer Bear and Brer Fox. So you could alternate between those 2 characters, or those 3 characters. Obviously, the bear and the fox, and then Brer Rabbit in front of them, and then the bear and the fox, and then Brer Rabbit in front of them. You can't do that with Tiana's Bayou Adventure, because all the characters are supposed to be together because they're trying to collect them. They're trying to work with them so that they can attend the party. So that just means that there's a lot of empty space in between the scenes, because you can't have Tiana Louis, Tiana Louis, Tiana Louis over and over and over again, because it would just feel wrong, you know? You can't have that many animatronics of the same person over and over again before you break the immersion. So I feel like that is kind of a problem, and that's a story problem. That's not really a budget problem. Like, a couple people are talking about how they cheaped out on this attraction because they didn't fill it with animatronics. The attraction medium isn't the best outlet for the story that they were trying to tell. So I feel like they should and could have come up with a better story that would have fit these characters in an animatronic format a lot better. That's not my only story issue with this attraction. We're actually going to dig into a lot of those in the next section. So the last Bayou scene is Tiana kind of taking a breather, and then Louis digging through a log. I kind of feel like they just didn't want to build another full-scale Louis, so that's why he's digging through the log. But it does provide variety, so I can't complain too much. There's also multiple full-scale Louis animatronics, which are all incredibly impressive. So, I shouldn't be complaining about that. I heard one person compare this moment to the moment on Flight of Passage where the Banshee kind of like takes a breather in that cavern. And I don't think that really works because the ride system is completely different. On Flight of Passage, you're always moving until you're not. Well, this one, you're always moving, but you're moving at a slow speed that's like constant. So like, it doesn't really feel like that, like we need a breather because the ride system is pretty chill outside of the 4 drops. So it is what it is. After you pass that scene, you have your first 3D animation screen, which I am not a fan of. This is the best one though, the one of Mama Odie on top of the second drop. They actually have like physical props in front of her to help blend the screen in, so I feel like that works really well. Obviously, Princess and the Frog is a 2D animated film. It was one of Disney's last ones, so it's kind of disappointing to see these characters in 3D animation. But also, at the same time, I do understand they're in animatronic format, so seeing them bounce between 2D animation and then like a 3D practical animatronic wouldn't really mesh well. There is an example of characters later in the attraction that I am going to use to dispute that claim. I disagree with that. I feel like that if they really wanted to, they could have made it work. Runaway Railway, that's a great example. I know that it's not technically 2D hand-drawn animation, but it's still like that same style. Like when you see Mickey and Minnie projected on a wall, they look 2D, but obviously they have like the 3D physical animatronics. That's a little different though because they have projected faces and they're more of a cartoony style compared to this version of Tiana. She's going for a more realistic look. So it is what it is. That's just kind of the decision that they went with. So 3D animation it is. Here's where you first encounter Mama Odie. And when I went into this attraction, I was trying to avoid spoilers. And Disney, I remember in one of their press releases, they were hyping this part of the attraction up as like a big spoiler. So I was really excited to see what they had in store for this part of the attraction, like after the second drop. And the answer was really disappointing for me. So Mama Odie sends you down the second drop. If you didn't know, the second drop has like a pop back up. It's kind of like a roller coaster, so you drop down and then you crest back up before you splash down. And when you're cresting back up, like a light goes off, and that light is supposed to shrink you down to the size of a frog. So I didn't know that at the time when I rode the attraction. So the light, when it flashed on, that actually like totally jump scared me, which was really funny. So that kind of made me jump. And then you turn the corner. There's a voiceover where Tiana tells Louis, where'd our friends go? And when I was on the attraction for the first time, I didn't know what was happening because I thought that piece of dialogue was referring to her critter friends that she had spent the whole rest of the ride looking for. So I didn't realize that she was talking about us, because she really only addressed us at the beginning of the ride, like looking at us. And then the rest of the ride, she's talking about the critters, the musicians, So the fact that it just like switches back to talking about us, I didn't pick up on that. And then your second big clue is when you turn right, there's a frog, and that frog is absolutely massive. But the thing is, how am I supposed to keep track of that? Like, I know that I mentioned all the tiny frogs at the beginning of the ride, so they're scattered throughout the ride, but a lot of the animals are disproportionate to like their real life counterparts. Like Louis is massive, and like this massive frog doesn't look too different from Louis. So I feel like they could have communicated better that Mama Odie was shrinking you, because I didn't realize that until later in the attraction. So this version of Splash Mountain has 4 drops. There's 2 indoor drops, which the version of Disneyland only has 3 with 1 indoor drop. So you drop again, and then there's more props that are like oversized, and then you turn the corner and there's like a massive screen where Tiana and Louis are they're 3D animation, and they're just absolutely huge. And as I said, when I was on the attraction, I didn't realize that Mama Odie shrunk us. So when I first saw that, my first reaction was like, what am I looking at right now? Because that was so confusing. And then I had to think about it before I realized, oh, she shrunk us. And then before we exited the attraction, I realized what I was missing. As someone who was avoiding spoilers and was just trying to enjoy the attraction, I didn't catch up on what they were doing. So I feel like that reflects on the attraction itself, because I feel like I'm a pretty active rider. Like, I try to engage with the story, and I didn't catch up on that. And I feel like some passive riders who are just there to vibe, they're probably gonna miss it too. So that's not great. I feel like they could do a better job of communicating what is happening. That being said, though, this second screen with the 3D animation is a lot more apparent. They didn't do nearly as much work to blend it into the rest of the show scene, which is really disappointing. So this is probably my least favorite part of the attraction, because that screen is huge. Like the rest of the ride is pretty much all animatronics, and the screens that are used are blended in really well. But this one is absolutely not blended in very well. After that, on the left-hand side, you're going to have a great example of screens that are blended in very well, with the fireflies going through like a bottle, and they appear big in the bottle before they fly out of it. I feel like that's a really cool effect. Also, I assume these flies are 3D animated, but they look a lot like the same flies in the Princess and the Frog movie. So I wish that the other characters were done like the fireflies in this scene, because it's super well done. I think those guys look amazing, while Tiana and Louis, literally right across from them, they look terrible. They look very plasticky. They don't look great, you know? Part of it might be the lighting. Tiana and Louis in that screen just look so bad, in my opinion. They look so bad, and it's really disappointing. That being said, though, I was worried they were going to use a lot more screens, so there's really only 3, and the third one is up ahead. It's Mama Odie, once again, right above us before the final lift hill, and she's bringing us back up to like a big scale. She says something along the lines of, we gotta make you bigger so you can make a big splash for the final drop. So this is a major change from Splash Mountain. They took away the tension, they took away the dread, they took away the anticipation of the final drop. Now it's just something that happens during the ride, which is okay. This is one of my major criticisms of the entire attraction. I feel like it's very one note. There isn't much variety, and that's why I brought up the flight of passage moment, or the apparent flight of passage moment in this attraction. Like, I feel like a lot of this ride, there isn't much emotional variety, because it's just like joyfully looking for critters for the party, and then you get shrunk, and then there's a party down at the frog level, which is fun and dandy. Then you go down the drop, and then at the end of the ride, it's literally the massive party. So it's just party. And I feel like that one brief scene with Tiana taking a breather isn't enough to provide emotional depth to the attraction. It's very one note, in my opinion. You could make the argument that a lot of rides at Magic Kingdom are very one note, which I will listen to. Splash Mountain was one of those that handled the transition from glee and joy and like looking for a new start to life, and then to dread, to suspense, to like a little bit of horror. Magic Kingdom doesn't really have a lot of scary moments, and the lift hill on Splash Mountain was one of the biggest examples of that. Obviously Haunted Mansion is the other big example, but outside of that, there's not much, and they got rid of it. So now all we have is Haunted Mansion, which is cool, but like, this ride's pretty long. I could use a little emotional variety. You don't even need to have the same notes that Splash Mountain had. One of my favorite things about Guardians of the Galaxy is that it completely changed what Tower of Terror was. Like, it's not even trying to be Tower of Terror. It's its own thing. And I feel like Tiana's Bayou Adventure is trying a little too hard to be just like Splash Mountain, but it's different in ways that aren't different enough. So that means that comparisons to Splash Mountain are pretty inevitable. Like, you can try your best to look at it as its own thing, but the reality of the situation is that the people around you, the world around you, is going to compare this to Splash Mountain because it's very similar to Splash Mountain. Like, just because you use the same ride system as Splash Mountain doesn't mean you need to use critters just like Splash Mountain. It doesn't mean you have to use upbeat songs in the same parts that Splash Mountain used upbeat songs. Like, you could have told a completely different story with the same ride system, and I guess they do. Like, it went from two animals chasing down one animal, and now it's two humanoid characters collecting animals. And that's pretty similar to what Splash Mountain was, but it's obviously a lot more appropriate. It's a lot more acceptable, but it's still pretty similar. Like, come on, guys, you couldn't have thought of anything different. So that's pretty disappointing. And as I talked about earlier, the section with Mama Odie shrinking you was supposed to be like the big plot twist. Not really plot twist. It was supposed to be the big surprise of the ride. And shrinking guests down to the size of something small is something that Disney has been doing forever. So I was really disappointed. Like, come on, guys. Like, I literally went to see It's Tough to Be a Bug the day before I rode Tiana's Bayou Adventure, and we're literally honorary bugs in that show. In Toy Story Land, we're honorary toys, and everything, we're shrunk down to the size of a toy, which means everything around us is huge. Toy Story Mania is another great example. That had been doing large props before the rest of Toy Story Land even opened. Like, even back in the 50s, like Pinocchio in Disneyland, they had oversized props. Like, Disney's been doing this forever, and like, come on, like, this is the big twist that you had. This was the big exciting change up that you had in store for Tiana. Come on, guys, like, she deserves better, in my opinion. Like, Disney should have thought of something a little more interesting. And a lot of people have brought up Dr. Facilier. He's technically dead in the movies, but a lot of these rides at parks just bring back characters who are dead anyway, or they just like completely contradict the movie or the movie franchise that the characters are from. Just take a look at Cosmic Rewind, where Groot looks like the Groot from the original Guardians of the Galaxy film, even though the baby Groot that grew up ended up looking nothing like the Groot from the original Guardians, but he's there in Cosmic Rewind. Cosmic Rewind literally has a dead character in the pre-show just because. So to use that excuse for not bringing back Dr. Facilier is totally lame, in my opinion. Plus, he's a magic character, and magic characters come back all the time because they're magic. They're not always dead because, you know, mystic, magic. Wonderful. I remember when Tiana's Bayou Adventure was first announced, a lot of people put like Dr. Facilier's villain song over the lift hill before the final drop, and that hit like really well. It hit emotionally for a lot of people. So the fact that they didn't do anything like that, especially since Dr. Facilier is like one of the most popular villains Disney has. Like, he's always in their Halloween parties, but he's not here in this attraction, which is kind of lame. It's a little disappointing. But I also understand this attraction is trying to rid itself of every ounce of problematic anything. So Dr. Facilier is a little problematic, so he can't set foot near the attraction, which is kind of disappointing, but it is what it is. The fact that they made that decision kind of just makes the attraction feel one note, which is one of my major criticisms, as I talked about. So anyway, we're going up that lift hill, the final lift hill on the attraction. When we reach the top, full-scale Mama Odie animatronic is to your left-hand side. I kind of wish you had more time to look at this animatronic, because I feel like this is the one where you have the least amount of time to look at her, which is kind of disappointing. I feel like you're looking at the screens of Mama Odie longer than you're looking at the animatronics of Mama Odie. Honestly, I feel like this is where they should have put the screen, and they should have moved the animatronic on top of the base of the lift hill. I feel like that would have made more sense, because it would have given guests more opportunity to soak in the animatronic itself. But instead, we're looking at the screen longer than we're looking at the animatronic, which is totally lame, in my opinion. You go down the drop. It's the same drop on Splash Mountain. It's awesome. It's fun. It's great. You do the turnaround. The music is back. It's all joyful and fun. You pass one of those armadillos that's looking at you, which is pretty cool. And then once you go back inside, you're at the final party. This is probably the most visually impressive part of Tiana's Bayou Adventure. I think it looks great. I was kind of thinking about this when they were making the switch. I was like, I wonder if they're going to keep the steamboat, because the steamboat is like an image that would work aesthetically and it would work logically because it's New Orleans. But they got rid of it and they changed it into like the city itself, which I think works really well. I think it looks amazing in there. The lighting is beautiful. There's a ton of animatronics, which I love. There is a screen, though. There's a screen on the right-hand side, so you thought you could sneak that by me, didn't you? You couldn't, but that's just a total nitpick. It's visually impressive. One thing that I've been kind of glossing over is that Disney has been spoiling their own attraction. Like, they released a POV before the ride even opened, which I was really upset with because I was trying to ride this without knowing anything about it. And then one day on my Instagram feed, they just showed this scene without like any warning, so it just popped up on my scene, and I knew exactly what it was. I was like, that's totally the finale. And that's what it is. So I'm kind of upset with Disney for spoiling me. That's kind of disappointing. I don't know why they spoiled their own attraction on their own Instagram feed. That's really annoying. But it was really impressive. I really like it. And then you have a final Mama Odie animatronic with a snake over some beignets, which is pretty cute. However, this is the second animatronic where I had that problem with the idle animation. Just like the first Tiana, I feel like this Mama Odie doesn't move until you're like right next to it, which I really don't like. And then you turn right and you're back in the station, and then that is Tiana's Bayou Adventure. And in my opinion, this attraction is a total mixed bag. It has a lot of great things, it has a lot of less than great things, and it has a couple bad things. So my main takeaway off of one ride, so again, this is all off of one ride. I'm completely overanalyzing this attraction, but I feel like this was a flawed concept that was executed very, very well. They pulled out all the stops for this attraction, and part of that is because I feel like Disney thought that they had to, because they would have angered everyone on the face of the planet if this attraction opened and it was budget cut or it was cheaply done. They would have been flamed by everyone. They would have been flamed by Splash Mountain lovers. They would have been flamed by Splash Mountain haters for not giving Tiana what she deserves. And I feel like they did an amazing job. And once again, the Bayou sequence after the first drop, it's like a 360-degree themed experience. It's very, very impressive. All the animatronics are absolutely amazing, except for the first and last one, but overall it's just spectacular. My problems with this attraction stem from the story. I feel like they could have done a better job. And I feel like that's because when they announced this attraction, they didn't know what their story was. So they were rushing to throw together a story that would fit the Splash Mountain show building while being a story about Tiana. And that's kind of disappointing because Splash Mountain was open for years after the announcement, and this is the best that they came up with. And in my opinion, it's lacking. If you love this attraction, I'm very glad that you do, but I feel like you can't reasonably deny that the story should have been better. Like, I feel like the animatronics are great. They put all that they could from like a practical budget standpoint. Like, they invested in this attraction, which I really appreciate. But the creative aspect of it is a little disappointing. And that's miles better than Incredicoaster and the rest of Pixar Pier, which is one of the major reviews that I've made on this channel. In that video, I said that Pixar Pier is a flawed concept done poorly, and that's like the worst. That's the bottom of the barrel for anything, you know? In my opinion, this Tiana's Bayou Adventure is a flawed concept done very, very, very well. So they did it great, but the original writing, the plan, the story that they had is flawed. So they almost hit a home run, in my opinion. A lot of people might try to make you believe that this attraction is a home run, and I don't think it is. I think a lot of people don't think it is. So if you're trying to push that on other people, don't. There's also the type of person who will try to convince you the opposite. They will like argue tooth and nail that this ride is a strikeout. And in my opinion, both sides are wrong. It's not a home run. It's not a strikeout. It's probably like a double, maybe a triple. It's good, not great. It's not terrible. It's good. It's solid. Do I like it better than Splash Mountain? I don't know yet. I've only been on Tiana's Bayou Adventure once in Florida. Like, my version in California isn't even open yet. So like once that happens, I'll feel like I'll be able to make a definitive answer. Right now, I'm kind of leaning towards Splash Mountain because I feel like Splash Mountain's story was a little more well knit, but this one is still amazing. It obviously has a lot better animatronics. The story is still acceptable, like it's not awful. It's way better than the story on Incredicoaster, that's for sure. So it's good, not great. And that was my major takeaway from Tiana's Bayou Adventure. I'm very excited for the version in California to open. I'm excited to compare it to the version in Florida that I got to experience. I hope I get to ride the version in Florida again. We'll see though. We'll see how it goes. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe. If you're gonna participate in the discourse in the comments, I strongly encourage you to be respectful. People are gonna disagree with you. I guarantee you right now that the comment section is filled with people who disagree with me. So I would love to hear your opinions. I would love to hear your perspectives. But please, please, please keep it civil. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate all of you, especially if you listen to every second of this video. Thank you so much. Please subscribe, and I'll catch you later.